I'm Shanna Skidmore. I am a former Fortune 100 financial advisor. I started a consulting company for primarily female-owned small businesses 10 years ago. I have now worked in finance for 15 years. So I really say my goal is to help business owners in two ways. One, to make money, and two, to then manage it well. So we have a lot of courses now on business finance, understanding your money, and personal finance, creating, because I think there's not a ton of tools out there as a business owner about how to manage your money at home with fluctuating income. If you don't have a paycheck, what about health insurance? So we have courses that teach how to make money and then how to manage it well. And then I do some one-on-one consulting work as well.
Awesome. So have you had this aspect of your business for 10 years then? Or was it something else before?
Yeah. So I started with fully just consulting. So kind of a little bit of background. I was, not to get nerdy about numbers, although I love them. I was looking at doing private equity and working with business owners, kind of think Shark Tank. So walking into businesses, helping them understand where they're making money, where they're losing money. It's a very male-dominated industry, and I was told that I would be traveling 4 days a week. And I knew that that just wasn't the life that I wanted. And I was living in Atlanta at the time. And I just thought it was so funny that all these business consultants were flying all over the world to meet with business owners. And then all these other business consultants were flying into Atlanta to meet with business owners. And I just thought, all these business consultants are on the airplane all the time, and there's all these businesses right here in front of us. And I grew up in the garden with my grandmother. I have an art degree, so I have this creative side as well. And I really saw that particularly female-owned creative businesses were pretty underserved in that community. We have questions about finance. We need to know about licensing our businesses and pricing. And there wasn't really a comfortable place to have those conversations. So I really felt like I was the bridge that could be the finance brain that loves art and creativity and really hopefully makes money feel more simple. So I started working with business owners right in the Atlanta area. And I'm so blessed and thankful that I got to help them, and they just shared my name so much. I did this for a year. I was still pursuing my MBA. I was shadowing private equity bankers. I was kind of just doing it on the side. And they were sharing my name so much. I was like, well, I guess this could be a business. And then I don't have to travel so much. So I started my business, it's funny, virtually. From the beginning, I had clients in New York in 2015, way before COVID. And so I did it for a few years, and it just grew so fast. And I'm so grateful, so blessed to get to help so many people understand their money. But I was having the same conversations over and over, like, how do you price your work? How do you need to be licensed? How do we set up a system for our finances like BookU? So I thought, what if we could just sit down and record my process, just record Shanna. My husband and I sat down at my kitchen table with a camera and like a janky Nikon. I mean, I don't even know what it was. And we just recorded. And that was the first iteration of our course, the Blueprint Model. And it's so funny, that was in 2015, 2016 is when it launched. The courses were not big back then. And it was just really cool. We got to help a lot of people understand their money. And so we have now, it's primarily the education side. I have a daughter. She's 2.5. We have another one on the way. So I do work part-time now. And my husband, Kyle, works with us full-time. And so the education at this season of life gives a lot of flexibility. And then I take on a little bit of one-on-one. So.
Yeah. And I know some people who've done the one-on-one with you and just gotten so much out of it. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're pregnant with baby number 2.
Yep.
And so am I. And then we also have our oldest are both the same age, I think, exact same-ish. Yours is slightly older than she's 2.5 already.
She's 2.5.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Hang on.
How old is your oldest?
He is 2 in 2 months. 2 months. So really just a few months behind yours.
Yeah.
Okay. So Shanna, when you started your business, were you using Instagram those years ago?
Okay. So I started my business in 2013 officially.
Yeah.
Started kind of doing it in 2012 unofficially. For about a year, I did it, just figuring it out. And that was the best. I'm so glad I did that. I always recommend that time. But so in 2013, I think was Instagram kind of brand new then. I'm such a slow adopter to all technology.
I think it would have been, yeah.
But I think if I scroll back to my first pictures, they were like pictures of my dog, and just very personal, just like a Facebook, just a personal platform. So I probably started somewhere between 2013, 2014. I definitely remember by 2015, definitely by 2016, when we launched the Blueprint model, I partnered with another business to launch a pricing course. And then we did a 3-month road trip in 2016. And I was trying to like document it on Instagram. So I definitely remember a transition. And I think it happened in that 2015, definitely by 2016 timeframe, where Instagram started becoming important for, I'm going to air quote important, for my business, where I thought it was more of a marketing tool than just a fun social platform. So yes, we were definitely using it not well, but we were using it well. And in 2017, I recorded some statistics, and it was bringing in 70% of the traffic to our website in 2017. Yeah. So it was our primary driver of marketing and contacts and audience. So yeah, it was a big piece of our business.
Yeah, and in 2017 was when you like quit Instagram. So I'd love to hear like why you made that decision, and then also like what does that mean for you? Like, do you still have the Instagram profile? Do you post as a consumer on like a private page, or is it like you aren't on it at all?
Okay. Oh, I love this question. So, it really started, I think everybody has felt this. Maybe not. I don't know. I felt when you start your business, it's almost like rose-colored glasses. You're so excited. You love what you do. You're so energetic about this new adventure and how you can show up and how you can serve. And I loved, and I still love what I do. But in the 2015, definitely when we launched the course in 2016, it's almost like it became really serious. It's like, this is who I am. I identify with this. This is a lot of my identity is wrapped up in my job. And I really started feeling more pressure. And that was, 3 years in. Officially, the business was making a really good income, more income than I ever thought it would make. I mean, it grew so much. And then, like I mentioned, in 2016, we took 3 months off to go on this road trip, my husband and I. He had just graduated with his second degree. It was such a fun. We had launched this new program. We had done over $100,000 in sales in our first. I mean, this was more money than we ever could have imagined it doing. And things were going so well. But I remember trying to keep up with this platform. And I felt this stirring inside of me. Honestly, I think it was God just saying, like, do you need this? Do you need this platform? Do you need this constant connection? And I remember, like, we're on a vacation, like we're off, we're traveling the country, and I'm trying to make sure I can take these beautiful pictures. And as I mentioned, I do finance. That's what I do. It's not, for me, that's my creativity, spreadsheets and reading numbers. That's not very pretty, but I have an art degree as well. And most of my clients, especially back then, were highly visual, aesthetic, creative businesses. And so I was trying to perfect these images, not being a photographer, not understanding how to. So I was frustrated. If I'm going to show up, I want to show up in a way that I feel proud of. So not only did I not want to really be doing it, but I wanted to do it well, and I couldn't. I didn't have the skills to do that. I was looking at all these beautiful feeds of these photographers, and I just could never match that aesthetic. So it started with a little bit of just frustration. Like, I'm spending so much time trying to make this pretty picture, but I'm not a photographer. And how do you show a visual representation of like a spreadsheet? That's not fun. So it kind of started just with a frustration. And then in 2017, I launched the Blueprint model again. I think at that point we did 200,000 or 300,000 in sales, which is pretty crazy for just I think that was our second launch. And we unfortunately had some really tough things that I never expected in the business, primarily copying, start happening. And I just felt really defeated. I just felt like my identity was so tied up in my work. And I just honestly needed less input in my life. I needed more quiet. I needed to get back to the heart and the why of what I was doing. And I think for me, Instagram just became so noisy. And I cannot imagine. I mean, could you imagine? That was 2017
Yeah.
versus now 2023. Back then, I was just like, everything sounds the same. Everything looks the same. I think we're all, it just, instead of it feeling collaborative, it started to feel really, it was like competitive. And honestly, a lot of that was my own emotions I needed to deal with. So I just thought, it was 2017. We had just launched this course. We made enough money to sustain us for the entire year. If we got no more sales, we were going to be okay. And I just thought, what if I went off for 3 months? What if I just took a break? I just needed some quiet. I needed some space to think. And so that's what really prompted I called it my social media experiment. And I wanted to take time off. As I mentioned, Elizabeth, earlier, 70% of our website traffic was coming from Instagram. And that made me nervous in 2017 to have one platform be the main driver of traffic. So I thought, I'm going to try out if I can do a different form of marketing and bring in the same amount of traffic. So I completely shut down Instagram and I completely shut down our business Facebook page. So I was locked out, like child lock. They changed the password. I couldn't log in. And I had no access to it. I don't remember in 2017. I'm pretty sure we took the profile down completely. We did not delete it because I did not want anybody to take my name because it is my name.
Yeah.
And my company name is my name. But we totally shut it down and locked me out. And I committed to stay off until I had another form of marketing that would replace Instagram. It took, and actually, I thought I was going to stay out for a year. That's what it was, a year. And it ended up taking 18 months for me to do it.
That's awesome. And when you were saying you're locked out, you don't have access to it, was there a team member at that time who was like still checking the DMs, or like were you just like, we're not doing anything?
We're not doing anything. So my very last post said, we're taking a social media break for a year, social media experiment. If you want to follow along, here's a blog. I wrote a blog post about it.
Smart.
And I put up a blog called My Social Media Free Experiment. It's probably still on my website. And I laid out some objectives. I want to go off of social media. I did not talk so much about the personal side because, again, I did not want to demonize social media. I don't think social media is bad. Does that make sense? Necessarily. In fact, I think it's helped a lot of small businesses grow. But for me personally, I knew I needed a personal break from it. And from a business perspective, I wanted to be smarter about marketing. And so I wanted to take the time off very strategically to figure out how to market in a more productive and effective way. And we had tracked everything. I was spending 5 hours a week on Instagram, just, engaging in the platform, posting. I had everything pre-scheduled. I mean, I had all the workflows, but I still, it's like, I'm going to take that 5 hours and transition it. We were going to do content marketing, like blogging, SEO, transition off. So no DMs, nobody could get me. We did take it down, I remember, because people said they would go searching for me, they couldn't find me, so they would sign up for my newsletter. And I was like, well, isn't that perfect? Great. And then I remember some people, we had a lot of quotes on there because I love quotes, and people would be like, I just miss your quotes, so it was down completely. And it got very quiet for a good minute. And I remember my biggest fear was that I would be forgotten in the marketplace, especially as I had mentioned, I was dealing with a lot of identity in my work. and a lot more people were coming in. I talk about money. So I think I felt like I had a little bit of protection in the
Mhm.
market, because to talk about money, I feel like you need a background in money, and you got to be really careful giving advice about money.
Yeah.
So I just never thought that people would come in maybe who maybe really shouldn't be talking about money and talk about it. And so I was having
Mhm.
this identity crisis before. I was kind of the only person you could hear from really about that. And so I really just had to do a lot of my own identity work. Like, you are not your business.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So, anyways, I could keep rambling on, but yeah, we took it down completely. No DMs, made a blog post, and pieced out for a year,
Yeah.
which turned into 18 months.
Yeah, I love how deliberate you were with it, and I think that's something listeners can hear if you are thinking about like, hey, I want to take some time off of like, you had a way you were going to announce it, you had a place you were trying to direct people, you had a I'm going to figure out these things in
Yeah.
the in between, all super helpful. And the being forgotten thing, I think that's such a huge like. Thanks for saying that because I think a lot of people feel that way. I felt that way going on maternity leave, and we were talking about that
Yeah.
before recording. That like I did a 5.5 month maternity leave with Colin, and I was like, is this like too much? Is my business going to fail because this? And you could feel that way doing any kind of big variety of less visibility in your business.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you too, did you ever have any anxiety around the idea of stopping Instagram because you had built a following on there, which is something you haven't really said yet, but you have like 14 or 15,000 followers on there right now,
Yeah.
still on your page that you're not using. So it's not like it wasn't working for you at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Like that's like
Yeah.
it was working. So did that make you feel a bit like, wait, there's all these people here that want to hear from me? Like, shouldn't I stay there? Did you ever feel any of that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I did not feel the pressure to stay, but I definitely felt the weight of leaving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, right. So I guess I had about 15,000 followers in 2017. So I think that was kind of a big deal back then.
Yeah.
Um, and I haven't been on there for 6 years. So it's the same number as when I left. I did not feel pressure to stay on Instagram, but I really was scared people would forget me. Like, this is the
Mhm.
only place I'm showing up. And it was. I wasn't writing blogs. I didn't have a newsletter. And I really didn't utilize Facebook. It was the only place I was showing up. And that's a problem.
Mhm.
For me, that was all the energy I had. I think people are surprised when I tell them, like, I'm a pretty introverted person and I am depleted of energy pretty quickly. So to engage and do the DMs, and I couldn't even imagine now, like, reels, and it's gotten even so much harder. Um, that takes so much time. And I just thought, is this the best use of my time? Like, if we're just going to
Yeah.
take out all of the emotion, and if we're going to take out all the feelings, and if we're going to take out all of the, all of that stuff that comes, and just look at the strategy, is it the
Mhm.
best use of my 5 hours a week, especially now as a newish mom with one on the way who I work 20 hours on a good week? 5 hours committed to this platform, is it the best use of my time? And that's where I knew I could volunteer as tribute and be the one to leave, because
Yeah.
we had enough funds that if we saw a lull in booking, which we did, we would be okay. And that's
Yeah.
how I knew I could do it. And you had asked me, Elizabeth, before, like, would I encourage people before you leave, or if you're thinking about leaving social media, do it.
Yeah.
But have a plan financially, because it hurt us for a good 6 months.
Mm.
It hurt financially and in all the ways. And I truly felt like I was forgotten.
Yeah, what are some ways with the planning aspect that people could do, like maybe even more specifically, like were you like writing this into a document that you were then talking about with your husband or team members? Like what kind of game plan things could people do who have a maybe similar business to yours of like online courses and also like consulting type work?
Yeah. So I think the first big question to ask is, why do you want to leave social media? I think
Okay.
identifying, like I mentioned, I always am so careful, and for years, I didn't really talk about this so much, so I love that so many people are asking me now because I truly do not want to demonize Instagram or Facebook. I think we can read all the studies that show us psychologically how it's affecting us. So I'm not here to like debate that. What I do want to say is if it's not working for you, figure out why. Why is it not working? Why do you want to take a break? If you're going to take a break, commit to it. Like do it. Go off of it. Leave. And for me, and I could only imagine now in 2023, I would be so nervous if Instagram was my biggest source of generating audience because it's so fickle. It is so fickle. It's so loud. I would be a nervous wreck. So I knew very specifically, I wanted to replace Instagram traffic with another source of marketing. So that was my number one goal. I was committed to not come back to Instagram until I did. And I sat down and before I left, I knew I wanted to see how much money we needed to make sure that our business sustains our family. We don't have a backup plan. At that time, Kyle was working. He did bring in money, but we still needed the income from my business. And now the business supports our whole family. So how much money do you need? Like, you're going to jump right back on if you get stressed about money. Like that's going to happen. So how much money do you need? What is your primary goal? Track some statistics before you leave. So I knew Instagram was taking me about 5 hours a week. I tracked it pretty religiously for a while. So I wanted to take the exact same amount of time and do something different. For us, that was blogging. And blogging for us focused on SEO and utilizing Pinterest to bring traffic to our website. So now when I look at my statistics every month, I see organic traffic and Pinterest as our top two drivers of traffic. And I just think that's so much more sustainable. And I know that everybody's follow-up question is, well, I don't know how to blog. I don't know what to blog about. So we can talk about that another time. But so just know what's your goal. Get some statistics in place to track the effectiveness of actually leaving because you will want to get back on. I'm telling you, Elizabeth, I remember for about 6 weeks, I did not realize how addicted to my phone I was. It wasn't even about Instagram. I had to put the Pinterest app on my phone because I was like, I just need something to do. I remember I went to a speaking event and I was sitting in this airport, tiny little airport in Waco, Texas. There's probably me and like 35 other people. And I was sitting there waiting on this airplane. Every single person was on their phone. No one spoke to each other. It was just like, bring a book because you're going to feel so lonely. And I felt so lonely in so many ways. But it was the best thing that ever happened for my marriage. It was the best thing that ever happened for my business, for me now as a mom. Like, I'm so grateful that God honestly prompted me, and Kyle, my husband, pushed me. He didn't force me, but he gave me that little, like, you can do this nudge. I'm so glad I quit way back then because I think it'd be even harder now.
Yeah, I can see that too now even hearing you talk about 5 hours a week being what you were doing back then, I think it's way higher for most business owners now because reels take so long to make. One reel you could spend like over an hour on easily just on the video piece, not even talking about the cover and the caption and the hashtags and the promoting it and then the commenting back to people. I mean, it can be like so much work. So I absolutely get that. I'm curious too for you. I know this is something you and I definitely have in common, but we're both very into like business that supports lifestyle and it's not just money for money's sake. And like, you've got to like be able to, still enjoy your family and other things as well as like a bigger priority. Well, I'm curious what you wish everyone else knew about, like from the lifestyle perspective of running a social media free business. And I'd love to hear too, I know you mentioned motherhood, but like how has being off Instagram impacted your motherhood and your faith even?
Yeah. Oh, this is such a good question. I think first I'll talk about marriage a little bit. Distraction can come in so many forms, whether it's reading a book, watching TV, listening to a podcast, being on Instagram, watching YouTube videos, whatever distraction is. But I think when you take the distraction out, it's hard to reconnect with a loved one. So I would tell everyone why I say it was so good for my marriage. And as I mentioned, I had pretty good boundaries. I thought I had
Yeah.
Instagram down. I
Yeah.
had my images pre-scheduled, my captions pre-written.
Yeah.
I was task batching I would engage for 30 minutes. I mean, I thought I got this. Like, I don't need to go
Yeah.
off. I'm good. But when I went off, I realized, and I've always had a great marriage. My husband and I, but it's like people will be like, Shanna, what do you talk about with your husband? I'm like, honestly, thank you for that very vulnerable question, but it's real. Our relationships, like just like me sitting in that airport, I had never felt just so alone. Just like you're swimming you were literally doing something like against culture. So relationship wise, it taught Kyle and I just how to be together again. I'm so grateful. Kyle has never been on social media. Like
I was gonna ask
he
that. Yeah.
doesn't get it. He doesn't care. But he
My
has those
husband's
other
the
things
same
like,
way, so we're right
yeah,
there. He doesn't know how to use any of it.
yeah. And I think while it's so great for small business owners, I think it can be like we're constantly attached to our business. We're constantly thinking about it. We're constantly on. We're constantly feeling the need to reply to people and just being like, you can actually turn off. So I think the whole thing about relationships, just in my faith, in my life, I'm more present where I am. If I could sum it all up, being off of Instagram has made me more present where I am. And it has also taught me that you don't have to respond to the email right away. You don't have to respond to people should not have instant access to you. Like, that's okay. Just how weird and strange. Like, my grandmother probably would look at our lives now and be like, what? I grew up in the days where you didn't have cell phones. I was driving around with no cell phone. And I miss that. And I know we talk about like church all the time, but like Jesus had 12 disciples and 3 in his inner circle. Like, we are not built for that much connectivity all the time. And so if we're so drained from emails and DMs and chats and all the things, how do we engage with our family at the end of the day? So all that to say, for me, the presence I feel in my life. And after 6 months, I'm telling you, I didn't even think about it. People ask me about Instagram today. And I'm just like, I don't even think about it. I'm not worried about my business.
Yeah.
But it takes time.
That's awesome. Yeah. And the presence thing makes so much sense because it's like you could be having dinner with your husband, but you have a phone where there's like 10 people who all want something from you on Instagram who are, especially if you have push notifications on, you're literally seeing it. That's a great thing to change at the very least.
Yes,
To take that
please.
off.
No
Yeah, it's like
notifications, everyone listening.
yes, but it's like yeah, it can invade such random times in your life. And yes, that not everyone needs to hear back from you immediately.
I think we've
So,
all
so
had that
true.
experience too, Elizabeth, just to quickly put like where we get a negative email or we get a negative DM and that's the thing. It totally changes when I say like, oh, I was on Instagram 5 hours a week, but I was emotionally dealing with Instagram for a lot longer. Why did that post not do good? That was such a great caption. Why don't people engage with it? We all know that emotional toll. And that's the part that do I still deal with that? Of course, in different ways. If something doesn't sell very well or if people don't respond to my newsletter or whatever. But it's just, we were not built as humans, I'm convinced, to carry all that we carry. And I just think social media for me became an unnecessary tool. I say it should be the cherry on top of your marketing sundae. It's not the ice cream. It's not the whipped cream. It's not the sprinkle. It's like the very last. If you have time for it, great.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Like for me, I know my podcast is my biggest like main marketing source. I'm curious for you too with because you started your podcast since you have been off Instagram. How did that play into like your overall marketing strategy as someone not using social media?
Oh, I love that question so much. So I went off Instagram and I said, I'm going to replace it. Content marketing, I think, is so smart because content lives on so much longer than any kind of and social media is a form of content marketing, but it's very short lived and it doesn't linger. So I just feel it's a lot of time for not a lot of reward. So we wanted to focus on blogging, but I'm a terrible writer. I'm extremely slow. And so for years, I struggled to show up consistently. I would write some blogs, I would write some newsletters, but I was never consistent. And it always bothered me. And I knew that I was hurting the business by not being consistent. So it's like, well, I have all these amazing conversations every day with entrepreneurs. I'm so blessed and lucky to get to see kind of the reel behind the highlight reel, is what I like to say.
Yeah.
Because numbers don't lie. And I just asked some friends, I was like, what if I started this podcast where we just talk about entrepreneurs and the journey of entrepreneurships and the reel behind the highlight reel? It's called Consider the Wildflowers. And I just love that so much because wildflowers survive in the harshest of circumstances. And I've shown up every week and I'm so proud. The hardest thing about not being on social media, especially with a podcast, is I cannot promote our our guests, like I would like to. Of course, I share on our blog. Of course, I share on our newsletter, and we have big numbers on both of those places. But that is the one thing. I had a podcast interview with a photographer, and he was saying he would love to quit social media, like most people say. Some people love it. There are listeners out here who are like, I love social media. I don't know what you're talking about. That's fine. Do you? Do you? I know a lot of people struggle with it. So he struggled with it, but he was like, I want to promote our vendors at our weddings.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one tough piece. And the only reason I have ever considered maybe outsourcing it to a social media person, because does make me sad. That makes me sad to not support our guests in the biggest way we can. So that is the only time I've considered outsourcing social media, Instagram particularly, because we still do have a Facebook business page. We did bring that back after 18 months.
Yeah.
And I briefly came back to Instagram for, I think, 2 days. And I was like, nope, not coming back. And I never did.
Yeah, because your most recent post, I think, is like 2019 maybe. So not 20.
So
I
did come back for a little while. And then in 2019, we had a team who they wanted to do it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. While we're talking about the outsourcing thing, I would love to know, and you just said you thought about outsourcing more recently because of your podcast, but I think I know the answer of why you chose to stop posting instead of outsourcing, but how would you suggest even that listeners evaluate that decision? Like, say we do have, for me in my business, for example, I am off social media very much so comparatively to what I would have been even like 6 months ago, because I have a marketing assistant now who actually, like, literally while you and I are on this interview, she will do a post, which I'm like, yes. And I helped with it. Like, I did the B-roll, I approved the caption, like we did very collaborative. But I still have the problem of just getting on there and scrolling and looking at people's stories and stuff. That's why I'm very motivated from what you're saying. But yeah, why stop versus outsourcing? How do we evaluate what makes sense for us?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So in 2017, honestly, I probably just didn't have a resource to outsource to. I just never considered outsourcing it. I want to say to all the social media managers out there, I think you are amazing. They're doing amazing work. Outsourcing social media is amazing. However, I think social media, we have to recognize, runs on an algorithm designed to keep people on a platform longer. So I, first of all, have this unfortunate, but for me personally, I work with business owners every day. That's what I do. I coach them. And if I were to coach every business owner, I would tell them to get off of social media. So I have this real issue with showing them up on social media and performing in a way that's going to keep them on there longer. So that's a struggle for me. It truly is something I wrestle with it and I can't reconcile it. So that's number one. In 2017, I just didn't have anybody to outsource it to. Number two, I really have a struggle with an internal tension of like, and now kind of on that same note, while I think social media managers are amazing, I think they're so gifted. I think we're in a position in the business where we could share about podcast episodes. I think at this point it could be productive. We all have to recognize it's an algorithm. And when you DM people and when you comment and when you're engaging, it's going to reward you more. And so we have to really look at, are we okay with showing up that much or having someone on our team show up that much? What is the cost of that? Because we have to perform in order for it to perform for us. And so for me, I do the bare minimum, honestly, in the business to keep it functioning. A lot of times we have a very small team, and that has just never been at the top of our to-do list. And that's why. But now, that we have the podcast, we have a bigger team, things are running really smoothly. I think we could hire a social media manager or someone on my team who is a great copywriter. She writes a ton of my emails to our students. And I think she'd do great. So it's open to consideration. That's why I say it's a great tool, but it is truly to the point where it's the cherry on top. We don't have to have it, but it'd be really cool if we did. So it's never a hard no. But what's funny now, Elizabeth, I get asked to talk about social media free so much. I think it would hurt us more to be on there. But I think outsourcing it could work. Just know and understand you have to perform to the algorithm.
Yeah.
And for us, I just wanted to not have to have it, so I just didn't.
Yeah. And even some of those tension pieces you were talking about earlier of feeling negative internally when you're with your family because you're posted bad, you would have all that still if someone else is posting for you. Because you would hopefully be somewhat aware of how it's all going when you're paying someone to do all that. So it's those, putting yourself out there really hard, and the performance aspect is there even if you're not the one directly posting.
It's great too, Elizabeth. If you don't have an Instagram account, you can't scroll Instagram.
Yeah.
It kicks you off.
Oh yeah, you really won't let you. Yeah.
I think it'll let you look at maybe 3, because sometimes I go on Instagram to do research, to look at the companies that are reaching out to me or see their posts. I think I can see maybe 2 or 3 posts, and then I'm prompted to log in. So it's I'm grateful for that. It's keeps you honest,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you as well. I know you're big into Toggle. I've heard you talk about that before. I don't know. Do you still use Toggle to track your time?
Every day. I love it.
And
I'm
me
tracking my time
too.
right now,
Me
Elizabeth.
too. An hour and 11 minutes. I've been kind of doing stuff for this episode. Yeah, that's so cool. So I know you were saying, which, okay, everyone needs to know that Toggle's such a great tool, TOGGL, for just knowing where your time's going, which is so important as a business owner, especially if you're someone who's not hours worked or hours worked, and you're trying to reduce your weekly pull into your business and make it worth the most overall. But I'm curious, just how do you think about your own time management as a working mom and as gearing up to have another child, and just kind of what does your Toggle look like? What are you doing every week now that you're not on Instagram?
Yeah. Okay. I love this question. If anybody feels short on time, quit Instagram. You'll get a lot more back. But all jokes aside, I'm a numbers person. I read data. That's what I do. And I make decisions off of it. I also have a psychology degree, which I think most people know. So I think that part weighs in of but does it feel good and is it working? So for me, especially now as a working mom, I work about 20 hours a week. I have one team member, and then my husband also works for the company. So it's a very small team of 3, and then we have contractors. So I look at what are the main drivers of revenue in our business? What is going to support that? So my only roles are coaching clients and students or marketing. That is where I spend my time. I have a team member who does a lot of the emails, handles a lot of student support. My husband does all of our geeky tech stuff. So he's doing ads, and he produces our podcast and all of our videos. So my role really is to create content for the blog and then to coach. So if I think about, there's something we do in the Blueprint model, we call it our time bank. So we look at time like we're depositing time and we're subtracting time. Just like you would a bank account. You put money in, you take money out, and we want to make sure it balances, right? We want to make sure we're not in the negative. So I sat down, I did this years ago. What are all the things I need to get done in the week? How much time does it take me? And why most of us feel so short on time is because we're trying to cram so much in with such little time. And so it was really an eye-opening exercise. And if anybody is feeling short on time, I encourage you to do this. What are all the things you need to get done business-wise, personally? How much time does it take you? If you're thinking about, when people talk about an ideal schedule, I'm like, I kind of don't think about an ideal schedule. I would like to work 20 hours a week. That's what I have to get. So I got to put all this into 20 hours. What is the most effective use of my time? So when I think about social media, even if I wanted to come back now, it is not the most effective use of my time. If I could write one blog post or produce one podcast episode, get it on the blog, graphics, Pinterest. We still have a pin that went viral on Pinterest. So funny. That can happen. Everybody listening, you can still go viral.
Yeah.
We have a pin that went viral on Pinterest, I think in 2018 or 2019. It still brings in like a third of our traffic every single month to our blog. Like, I'm going to have something live on for years with my 5 hours a week of marketing time versus trying to create a reel that I'm not great at. And I would be so slow at doing that. So when I think about my time, I just look at, okay, how much money do we need to make? How big does our audience need to be in order to support that? And what could I be doing that's the most effective way to bring in that audience? I think the reason people don't get off social media, I think social media has this way of convincing us that it's doing good for our business. And I'm not necessarily saying it's necessarily doing bad, but it is doing bad if it's distracting us from what could actually grow our business. But it's a quick win versus a slow build. Content marketing, blogging, SEO, Pinterest, that's a slow strategy. Podcasting, slow strategy. And I think Instagram feels so much more instant. Well, I can get a client today. But it's like, what if you took even just cut your time in Instagram in half and put it towards something else? If you can't go cold turkey, what if you could just slowly transition time? It would just be so much more effective. So clearly I'm very passionate about this topic because it has been so good for my life and my happiness and my joy and my family and my business. We did 2017 to 2018 totally off of Instagram. We increased our sales by over 200,000. The next year, 2018, we did more than 10x, I want to say like 500,000 more. I can't remember. I should have looked up these numbers, Elizabeth, but over $500,000 more with no social media usage, no Facebook, no Instagram is what I mean. I've never done TikTok. I don't know anything about a reel. And your business can make money. In fact, I think there's such a great way to do it. And if you aren't thriving, figure out why.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I love your emphasis on Google Analytics and looking at website traffic because I think I want everyone listening to hear that. I feel, especially as a web designer, of like that's something we often don't look at much because we're more concerned with like, all these ghost followers coming to your Instagram and then immediately unfollowing you and just tracking that number or just tracking revenue even, but like tracking or things like podcast downloads. So like the actual people going to your website where you can make the sale or get the inquiry is really important data to have that we often can like overlook.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Last big thing, I guess I just want to ask you for closing, like, do you have any last thoughts for anyone, especially as we're like looking at the new year who like want to either reduce their time spent on social media for their business this year, or if they're like you and they're like, hey, I want to try 3 months off or I want to try a year off. What kind of like final words would you give them?
Well, something I wish I had done. So I always want to tell people this. There's a few things I wish I had done and some things I would do over again. First of all, you can shut down your account but not delete it. So don't get rid of your name.
Yeah.
But the things I wish I'd done is apply for an Amazon storefront and a like to know it or like it to know it, or I don't know
Yeah.
what those accounts are, but a share a sale account before I left, because we had such a hard time and we still cannot get a share a sale account. Because if you ever want to share about like your Target pillows that you love, which I do all the time, and not that I
Yeah.
would share it for free, but I would rather get a little commission off of it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
so they really, I think, look at your Instagram following for things like that. So I didn't, a team member of mine, I think went in and turned my Instagram back on, and then we got accepted by Amazon. So I think if you go on Instagram right now, you could find me, but it's not active. So those are the things I would do differently. I would think far in advance of like, maybe one day I would want this Instagram account, because we have to realize that's the way the world works. Also,
Mhm.
I will likely never be discovered on Instagram or go viral because I'm not on there, right? So I'm not going to, maybe I'll be on Magnolia Network, but she won't find me through Instagram. Just accepting that that's okay. But if you are somebody who wants to transition off, I would just make some notes. How are you feeling? Why would you like to leave? How much
Mhm.
money did the business make? What are your stats? What are your Google Analytics stats? How many people are coming to your website now? That's important to know. I know that stat. When I left in 2017, we had about 2,500 monthly visitors, 70% from Instagram. I'm so glad I have that data so that when my emotions boil up and I see, in 2019, it was like the world of ads, and 2022,
Yeah.
2020 as well. People's businesses were just growing so fast, and ads were just, everybody was doing so good with ads. And I felt like we really missed a huge piece of the market because we were pretty quiet.
Yeah.
When the emotions come, to remember we're making the money we need to make, we're tracking the data we need to track. So that's what I would encourage people to do. And then just to create an alternate plan, I would choose one way that you want to transition your audience. Starting a newsletter is a great idea, moving them over to a newsletter for sure. And blogging has been great for us. And then, of course, we do the podcast now, which we didn't start until last year. So I had already been off 3 or 4 years. But give people another way to get to know you, because you have to have, I say, people buy from people. So if you love webinars, do a weekly webinar. If you love, you can still have Facebook, and, like, figure out one way you can still show up for your people.
Mhm.
But please just hear me say, you can do this. I feel like I need to write a book on how to quit social media
You
and
should.
business,
Yeah.
because I'm so
Uh,
passionate
uh,
about it.
you are, and this has been such a helpful conversation. And yeah, it's like I love your emphasis on like knowing what's next and having a place you're funneling people to, because I think that's the scariest thing for a lot of people of like, well, if someone were to look at their own data like yours and say, oh, this is 70%, well, now what's going to happen with that? And I know you also talked about saving up ahead of time. Do you want to talk about that for a second more
Yeah.
of like the saving up aspect you did?
Yeah. So if and then I think, Elizabeth, just to point out what you said, do you need to go off of it completely? Do you need to outsource it to someone else? Like, if you don't struggle with wasting your time and just scrolling, maybe you could. If you just use it as an online portfolio, maybe somebody else could post for you. If you don't care that you don't get a ton of engagement, but it's still there, like if you just want a presence, like I turned mine off completely. Some people maybe don't need to do that. But I loved that when I turned it off completely. If people can't find you on Instagram, they come to your website. That's what they're going to do. And I'm just
Mm,
glad about that. Um,
yeah.
I totally got on a train of thought but saving up before you leave. So before you leave, just know it's going to get quiet. So if you're getting a lot of clients through direct messages, through posting, I think transitioning over a period of time would be helpful. So over 3 months, try to start pushing people to get on your newsletter. Come up with a way to move people off of the platform, which I think we all should be doing anyways. Get people off the platform onto your website, onto a newsletter. I think having a strategy like that, I was blessed and in a situation where we could sell a product save enough cash to handle 3 or 6 months of a lull. If you don't have that luxury, if you're in the wedding business and it's like we're getting clients all the time, I also think it's helpful to look at, for instance, in the wedding industry, do you never book June and July? Like, is that your slow season? Maybe that's the time to do it. Or if it's in the winter and that's when all of your inquiries come in, that's probably not the time to do it. So I think we can look at our business and say, when is it going to hurt the least? Or how can I plan in advance so I have the money I need? Because the worst thing would be to jump off, get stressed about money, and then have to jump back on.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome, Shanna. Well, I want to ask you like a few real quick rapid fire questions to close. And I want you to tell everyone where they can connect with you on the newsletter and podcast and things.
Okay.
But first question. So this is like off topic of social media, but very on topic for you. What unpopular opinion do you have about finance and finance education for business owners?
I'm so glad that you sent these to me in advance because I'm so bad at rapid fire, but I asked rapid fire on my own podcast, which is so funny.
Yeah.
The biggest one, and people are like, oh, they're going to want to hear more, but I really struggle when people say price what you're worth.
Oh, I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Because I think worth is not a dollar amount. And so I get what they're trying to say. You are worth charging for. I mean, I get psychologically, so many people struggle with like charging money for what they do. But I don't think it's a helpful strategy. So that's a kind of a thing I wish we could talk a little differently about.
I agree. Yeah, well, as soon as you start associating that you're worth this amount of money and that's how much you charge, it's like that's just not where you want your headspace to be, especially as personal brand businesses. It's like you already have the difficulty of it being your name.
Yes.
And then now you got to deal with this. Yeah.
Your identity.
Yeah. What's a recent purchase of $100 or less that's positively impacted your life?
Okay. This is funny. I love coffee table books. I'm obsessed with them. And I bought the Sid and Shay McGee Make Life Beautiful. This was a few years ago. I thought it was a coffee table book, but it's not. It's like it's just like a biography basically. And so for years I didn't read it because I was mad that I thought I was getting a coffee table book, and I was clearly it's my fault. But I read it this year, and it was such a wonderful read because they both really just talk about the real of entrepreneurship, the hard, the good, the not understanding the numbers, it was probably one of my favorite books of 2023 was Make Life Beautiful, Sid and Shay McGee. Under $100 for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Love that rec. What's one habit you have that you think has made the biggest difference in your business?
Well, we already talked about it.
I
Spoiler
know.
alert, tracking your time. 100%.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Awesome. Yeah, and I feel like I could do a whole nother conversation with you just on that because a lot of people don't understand how to do that well and what that means. But you're like clocking in and out of different tasks then.
Yes.
Just to clarify, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I think yes, it is very hard. I get asked about tracking my time all the time because it's hard to figure out how to do it. I always tell people the biggest thing is you have to batch your tasks. If you're doing a ton of different things at one time or working on 5 different projects at one time, then it's impossible to track. It's pretty impossible to track your time. So I think I really focus on one client at a time, one course at a time, all like administrative stuff at a time. And that's what's really helped me be more accurate in tracking.
Which that's a better way to work anyway. So it's like that kind of works out well then. That's how you track better.
That's right.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Shanna, tell everyone where they can find you and connect with you.
Okay, so the podcast, of course, Consider the Wildflowers, is stories of entrepreneurs, the reel behind the highlight reel. We love it. It's a weekly. It comes out on Thursdays. We're really proud of it. And it's just such a joy for me to get to speak with entrepreneurs, and I think it's going to be really encouraging. But if you're someone who is struggling in your business to make money, of course, I would love to help, or you just want to understand your money personally or in the business better. We have a 35-page ebook. It's a free download. It's called The Profitability Playbook. I have so many people who are like, this should be paid. It's really good. So if you just go to shannaskidmore.com/playbook, you can get a copy of it. So I always tell people that's a super helpful resource and I have 3 or 4 calculators in there, like pricing calculators and stuff. That'll be really helpful. So go there, shannasskimmer.com/playbook.
Awesome. I need to go get that. Yes, and everyone needs to listen to your podcast. Seriously, I love your show, so I can like advocate that it's such good conversations and you're a great interviewer and it's really fun to listen. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was wonderful and all the motivation. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.